But I just like the room.
All right, welcome to the February 24th, 2022 Curriculum Committee meeting of the School District of Haverford Township. Let's rise for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And who's going to kick off the room?
I'd be happy to.
Yep. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Wiedemann. We are happy to be here this evening with two items on the agenda for our Curriculum and Pupil Services Committee. Our first item we would like to address is our academic performance update. And our second item is about something that will be coming to the board in the next meeting or two, and that's our Kutztown Reading Internship Program. So this evening, we're very happy to share with you some of our academic progress so far this year. And to do so, I will be joined by Ms. Sara Christianson, our Director of Learning and Assessment, as well as Dr. Gary Moyer, Dr. Jeff Nesbitt, and Ms. Sandy Connelly. And I don't have the clicker. Does someone have the clicker? Or I should be up there. That's why I don't have the clicker. Jeff, do you mind just clicking from there? Is that all right? Great. All right, that's perfect, right over there. As you know, we are guided in all of our work by our district's mission and pillars. And this evening, we will be speaking specifically to our efforts to support students as they grow and achieve academically. But we will also be discussing just a little bit about the importance of addressing the whole child and the spectrum of needs that all of our students have. We measure academic success in many ways. Those include our national and state assessments, such as the SAT and the PSSAs. We also use what are called universal screeners that we'll hear more about this evening. And those are given to all students at a particular grade level in order to better understand what they know and what they need. Of course, we consider student performance on unit assessments, projects, and other classroom-based assessments, as well as their overall grades. And although we don't report results from them, I do want to just emphasize the importance of a daily formative assessments that our teachers use with their students in their classrooms. These are planned questions. They're things like tickets out the door or other informal assessments that teachers give every day to better understand what their students have learned and then decide what to teach them next. All of these types of assessments help us to get to a bigger picture of how the curriculum is working and what needs to change, as well as a more detailed picture of what each student knows and what each student needs. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sara.
Thank you, Jen. But we all know the educational experience goes beyond the classroom. So we also measure student success by participation in other school-related activities. Students engage in a wide variety of clubs, extracurricular activities, sports, as well as work throughout our community. We understand the importance of these activities to our students and our staff in building connections, deepening relationships, as well as providing an outlet for our students' energy, talents, and interests. I'm happy to report that most, if not all, of our clubs are back up and running at the secondary level and are experiencing almost all the same level of student involvement as they were prior to COVID. Some students have even requested new activities in clubs, so the offerings continue to grow at both the middle and the high school level. The elementary schools are also beginning their transition to move towards more in-person activities. We've already begun to hear the competitive jabs between our principals as discussions about the track meet have begun. Student voice is an essential part of the educational success in Haverford. Each of our principals have established some variation of student groups where opportunity is provided for students to share important information with building administration. As you know, we are also beginning a social emotional wellness survey for our 6th and 9th grade students to ensure we are hearing and meeting their social emotional needs. We also administer the PSSM survey, where we measure how our students feel if their sense of belonging and how strong they are connected to our school community. I will share more about that a little later. Next, we'll move on to some of the data. But before we dive into the data, we thought it was important to highlight current educational trends with standardized assessments, as a significant shift is occurring. The pandemic has affected standardized assessments across the nation and the world. Scores are coming back lower than typical and are projected to be lower over the years to come. The value of weighted and standardized assessments has been a topic of discussion for many years, far preceding the educational shifts students experienced during COVID-19. Prior to the pandemic, there was a growing acknowledgement that standardized tests don't necessarily represent how students might perform. An acknowledgement that mastery of material, the ability to perform under pressure and to persist at a task and do it with critical thinking skills cannot be captured in a test. Without testing, universities will be looking more closely at other aspects of college applications. Many have been increasingly interested in how applicants have contributed to their community. Often volunteering and other community work is becoming a requirement. Equity also plays a part in the changing attitude towards standardized testing. Education is often seen as an equalizer, but many educational settings are acknowledging that testing can be inherently unequal because students from low-income families often cannot access the same preparation courses and materials as students from wealthy families. In Haverford, student growth has and will continue to be a key data point we monitor, whether it's through the Pennsylvania's value-added assessment system, local benchmark assessments, or MTSS progress checks. We are committed to seeing that all of our students are showing growth and developing as learners. We are seeing positive trends in the growth of our students. On to PSSA data. As of today, only individual, that's somebody said, hold on. I'm sorry. As of today, only individual PSSA scores have been shared with districts. We learned just this morning that the state intends to publish more PSSA information on the Future Ready Index for each building sometime next week. We do not have any specific information yet about what will be published. Once we learn more, we will certainly update the board. For now, we'll share more about information we do have. The individual student scores were accompanied by recommendations from Pennsylvania Department of Education about the use of these data. While the assessments did not change, the timing of the assessments and student participation rates in combination with contextual factors related to COVID-19 pandemic necessitate caution in the interpretation and use of this data, of these results. PDE will not be utilizing PSSA and Keystone results for use in teacher evaluations. They will not be generating a building score for Future Ready Index reporting, and there will be no PBOS or growth score based from the 2021 assessment. The state will also not be preparing any aggregate data, which means that there is no way to compare how our students did collectively to neighboring districts or even against the state averages. We will not create what is not provided to us with regard to statewide tests. There will be no way to verify our findings. Therefore, you will not see combined percentage breakdowns like you have in the past. This is not to say that the data was not reviewed. We did follow PDE's recommendation to review student performance across the reporting categories. And our reporting categories show that our relative strengths are still our relative strengths, and our relative weaknesses are still our relative weaknesses. Families can expect to see individual student reports in homes around the week of March 7th for those students who did participate in the PSSA assessment. As PDE recommends, we urge you to review these scores as one snapshot in a photo album of evidence about student achievement. Families should also consider other measures such as grades, classroom work, participation in daily activities to determine the child's success. PDE also recommends considering that conditions for learning were disrupted by the pandemic, and those factors can have a significant impact on performance. And now my colleague, Dr. Gary Moyer, will review some more Haverford-specific data.
Good evening, everyone. The chart shown here shows a 5-year summary of Haverford High School's AP participation and performance. As you can see, the total number of students taking AP exams fell for the first time during the period covered. So last year, between 2020 and 2021, the number of participants and tests taken fell, with almost 79 fewer students testing last spring than the year before. And since students can take multiple AP tests each year, the net result was 228 fewer tests administered in 2021 than were administered in 2020. The result of those students who did not choose the test was down as well, with almost 6% fewer scores of 3 or more. For 2021, AP tests were administered either in person or online, depending on the individual course and the choice of the instructor. This chart outlines the participation and performance of our high school students on the ACT test over the last 3 years. While the chart shows score increases in each of the subject areas for the class of 2020 over the class of 2019, and then the class of 2021 over the class of 2020, it's important to take note of the drop in the level of participation from 2020 to 2021. There was a decrease in the number of students taking the ACT from 131 students down to 29 students. That's close to an 80% drop in participation. Multiple reasons, some we've heard tonight for that particular drop, and many of those reasons are COVID related. In response to the difficulties accessing testing facilities for the ACT and SATs this past year, 89% of the Common App member colleges and universities did not require test scores for their applicants. That marked a steep decrease in the number of schools that were asking for those scores when the year prior, it was only 1/3 of schools that required the test, the SAT or ACT. So it was a large increase. Many speculate that this move by many colleges and universities, combined with the limited access to testing, resulted in the decreased participation we see here. Okay. SATs, here we go. This slide shows us the mean SAT scores for all Haverford Township School District students who took the took the SAT for October, November, and December in the years covered 2019, 20, and 21. In addition, the mean scores for the state of Pennsylvania are shown, as well as the mean score for the nation. Scores show that Haverford Township typically outperforms both the state and the nation with their mean score, with October 21 being an anomaly on, as you can see from the chart, where we were outperformed by the national mean as a whole. College Board cautions us, however, that because participation numbers vary so widely from a normal year due to the pandemic, it's not possible to compare performance results between the class of 2021 and previous classes. According to collegeboard.com, the pause in testing in March, May, and June of 2020 impacted the ability of the class of 2021 to access tests. And when the weekend testing resumed in August of 2020, many of the local test centers were either closed or reduced in capacity, further limiting access to the test. So there was a 33% decrease in the number of students who were able to take the SAT in 2021 versus 2020. So that had an impact as well.
Okay, I'll take a moment here to talk about our more local data, which include secondary level grades. We're just sort of sticking with secondary because that's who takes the SAT, the AP, and the ACT. So in addition to those standardized assessments, we are looking at these local grades in order to determine how well our students are performing academically. Here, you see a summary of Q2 grades for both our middle school and our high school. Let's see, who's on the top there? HMS is on the top and HHS is on the bottom. Okay, so we also provided prior years, although everybody's telling us do not compare year to year for any test. We did want to just provide some context for the board to see. Of the grades recorded And there are still a few, medical exemptions or still need to be completed things. But of the grades recorded, the percentages are all reflected on these bar charts. As you can see at both schools, the majority of the recorded quarter 2 grades are A's. And if you look across the years, you can see that this year there is a higher percentage of A's than there was in the past 2 years. Now, this could be attributed to many factors, including the fact that we've had more days of in-person learning this year than last year. I think it is also helpful to look, and it's important to look at multiple sources of information. So we'll look at these grades as, again, one snapshot in the photo album of academic performance in order for us to draw appropriate conclusions. I do want to, though, just one more time recognize the efforts of our students, their families, our teachers and administrators, because what you see here represents various formats of schooling. And despite the fact that everyone had to figure out how to deliver and participate in those various formats of schooling, we are still seeing students who are able to complete their assignments satisfactorily, meet the standards according to our curriculum-based assessments, and teachers who are working really hard to make sure that they can do that. And of course, their families as well. I don't want to not acknowledge the work that has been done at home as well. So I just wanted to recognize all those groups. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sandy Connelly, who will begin to share some of our elementary data.
Thanks, Jen. Now let's take a look at what academic performance data we use to determine the degree to which students are learning the standards and skills required in elementary school. One key assessment for elementary students is in the Ames Web Plus screening tool for English language arts. We currently use this tool to screen students in kindergarten through 5th grade in the areas of phonemic awareness, phonics, reading comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency. In these graphs, we are looking at the fall to winter screening results. The green section shows the number and percentage of students who are considered Tier 1 or in no need of remediation or intervention. The yellow section shows the same number of students who may need some intervention. The red section shows the same for those who require reading intervention. You'll also notice some numbers at the bottom. It's important to note that what is in the parentheses are percentages, and the other number is the actual number of students who were tested. And I know you really can't see those numbers on this slide, but the school board members have this up close and personal so they can look at it there. You'll also notice some numbers, whoops, I said that. These trees, as we call them, tell us a story about the grade, and we use this to make curriculum decisions that impact all students. Our principals, teachers, reading specialists, special education teachers, and interventionists actually drill down to the student level of this data, using it to form student groups and design specific lessons and activities that help students at each of these levels grow. You'll notice on this slide that in kindergarten, there is a similar number of proficient students in the fall and the winter. The fall is on the left and the winter is on the right. And fewer students in the red in the winter, indicating that more students gained letter name and letter sound knowledge from the beginning of the year. Some students came to us with little or no preschool experience because of their COVID learning. In 1st grade, you also see a great increase in the number of students who fall into the green category. You can see that red has really diminished and the green has really grown. This gives us some indication that what we're doing in school is working. These students came from a hybrid kindergarten year with interruptions to instruction, and now that they're in school all day, they're making up those skills. It's great to have the students back in school. Although this is a similar trend to what we have seen historically, this data is more dramatic than in previous years. Here you can see 2nd and 3rd grade. They're also making progress from the fall. You can see the impact on the pandemic for the start of the 2nd grade year, but again, students are making gains being in the classroom. As you can see in the 2nd grade right-hand tree, or pyramid, you can see there's a lot more green and less red and yellow. It's great to see how so few students who need intensive intervention by the end of 3rd grade. And then when we look at 4th and 5th grade, you can see that green is growing and the red is diminishing. It's a similar story. and similar to one another. So we're continuing to get better. We found that, as measured by AimsWeb, there are few students who need basic decoding, comprehension, and vocabulary and fluency by 4th and 5th grade. But as a reminder, this is just a screening measure. We use lots of other assessments as well. So while most students are proficient by these measures, we also use curriculum unit assessments, benchmark tests, and formative and formal assessments, as Ms. Saksa mentioned, to represent and to respond to areas of student need and to recognize their strengths. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Nesbitt, and he can tell us about math.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here this evening. Good to see everybody. Went too far. So this was actually the first year that we're using the NWEA MAP Growth Assessment. The MAP Growth Assessment is a tool that can be used K through 12. We're using it presently K through 5 to measure actually 1 through 5, to measure our academic success in math of our students. When we adopted a new math program that was aligned to the PA standards, we began looking for a tool that was an outside measurement that could both assess to the PA standards and that was nationally normed, and that's what this test is. So it's a nationally normed test, so we can see how students are doing relative to their peers all across the country, and we can also get data back on the reporting categories related to the PA standards, and then we can provide additional support for the students on those PA standards. The next couple slides are going to be using what the testing company refers to as the Roush Inventory Test Score, or the RIT score. It's just a systematic method for normalizing scores. So we're taking raw scores that kids take the standardized assessment. It's 42 questions, 43 questions. It's actually a computer-based assessment beginning in 1st grade. And as the students take it, if they get it right, it gets more challenging. If they get it wrong, it gets easier. And the goal is that students get about 50% of the material correct. And we coach all the students and tell them that there's really no way for us to know what they know and what they don't know unless they get about half of them wrong. So they shouldn't panic and just do the best that they can, but it does need to get wrong answers so that it narrows down on where they are. And then what happens is a student scores a 23 out of 43, and they convert that to a normal score so that the scores can be compared universally across the grades. So the RIT scores, and they give us the norms of the approximate grade level positions where they should be, and we are above that in all of our grades. We're above the nationally normed average in all the grades. And this is just reporting the fall scores versus the winter scores. And you can see in all of our grades, they are going up, which is good news. It's actually a test that is very much like the PSSA PVOS test. They actually compare not just right on the score, they actually factor in the fact that the student has been in school for 16 weeks between test periods. So if you scored a 170 on the test in the fall, what they do is they look at all the students that scored 170 in the fall and they say on average the scores made it to 176. So the goal is that as a 170 scorer in 1st grade that you get a 176 when you take it 16 weeks later. And if you get a 176, then it says you're growing at the rate that the national normed average growth. So it's not comparing a 170 to a 170 and saying, hey, you grew. It's actually comparing it to all the other students that took the test and then saying you also grew. And in this is actually showing the little gray bar is the extra growth. So this is actually showing what the national normed growth is versus our growth in each of those grades. And in each of the grades, we're actually growing better than the nationally normed growths. One of the other things, though, even though we're doing very well and kids are growing very well in our math classes, MAP Growth said right at the beginning, look, this is a nationally normed test. If you go for the 50th percentile, the state test in Pennsylvania is so challenging that it's above the 50th percentile. So even though we're hitting that 50th percentile and exceeding that 50th percentile, in order to be successful in the PSSA, you have to be higher than the 50th percentile because the PSSA is not a nationally normed test. One other thing with this is all the data that this is all the summary data, but what's really nice about this is that we get this for every single student. So we get for the student where they scored in the fall, what relative area of weakness they have versus the standards, how much they grew from fall to winter, and where they are in the winter, and then we will give it again in the spring. So this kind of information is actually really useful for the teachers on an individual student use basis, and they can really change their instruction based upon the feedback that they get from this.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So now that you've seen some of the academic performance data across the last couple of years, we'd like to provide you with a little bit more detail about how we're using those American Rescue Plan ESSER funds to support students for their achievement and their growth. At the elementary level, we have implemented a more robust approach to providing students with targeted instruction called multi-tiered system of supports. You may have heard the term MTSS. We're actually providing interventionists that are supporting that MTSS system. So essentially, there's a 45-minute period in each school day where students participate in lessons that are designed to address their specific needs in math and English language arts. And those are determined by the things that Jeff and Sandy just described to us, as we are able to drill down for students, create groups that need the same thing, and then the interventionists are able to work with them until they see that they've gained some mastery of them. And so that's what those folks are doing. Additionally, we have used ESSER funding to purchase some of the instructional materials that we've used during MTSS. We've gotten new books like Great Books that are helping students at the enrichment end of things, and we've purchased additional foundations materials, which are helping kids with really foundational skills. I always get those confused when I have to say foundations. So we're using the funding to serve all of the students in this MTSS structure. The ESSER funds are also being used right now to provide in-school tutoring at the secondary level. So we don't have interventionists or that intervention period in middle or high school, but we are offering students who qualify additional tutoring with the teacher during their school day when they have openings in their schedule for, we're saying, at least 10 sessions, but some are sticking with it for longer, and our teachers are providing that tutoring in school at the secondary level. Additionally, we are just about to begin offering sort of an after-school Zoom academic support, and that will be available K through 12 to small groups of students who qualify. And again, it will be, right now we're working with our teachers to be able to provide that to small groups of students. And if we see that there's a need, then we may even engage with some other outside agencies who provide that kind of tutoring across the nation and can be available for our students as well. Additionally, we will be using ESSER funding to expand our summer school offerings in hopes that we can increase participation. We recognize that summer school is not necessarily something that all students want to participate in, but we hope by offering a little bit more variety of programming, we'll be able to get some more kids to go ahead and take advantage of that. Oh, good, thank you. So while the supports that I just described are really directly related to academics, it's important to acknowledge that our students' social and emotional wellness is a pivotal factor in their academic success. And so to that end, our ESSER funding also provides the supports that you see listed here. This week, we've begun screening our 6th and 9th grade students to determine who might be in need of an additional mental health support intervention. ESSER-funded licensed professional counselors are the ones who will provide those interventions to students who qualify. Our ESSER will also fund an additional, or is also funding an additional half-time behavior specialists, and that's for students in the elementary general education programs. And this individual has been just invaluable as he supports teachers and students in really identifying root causes of behaviors that might be keeping kids from doing their best in the classroom, and then developing strategies, behavior plans, reward systems, things that will work to help them get their behaviors in line to a place where they can access the learning the way that they would in any other year. ESSER has also allowed our counselors to purchase additional supplies that better serve the students, so they're able to buy more books, more games, more therapy toys, things that they need when they're working with their students. And we will all be participating in social and emotional wellness professional development that is also funded by ESSER over the next 2 years. Additionally, ESSER funds will support efforts to address chronic absenteeism and to pay additional nursing staff, which we used this year. So lots of uses for those ESSER funds to address what we've just presented. And now Sarah's going to return and share with you some more information related to SEW regarding our annual belonging survey, the PSSM.
Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
In January, students in grades 4 through 12 were given the opportunity to share feedback on their sense of belonging and suggestions on how they could feel more connected to the adults in their building by engaging in the psychological sense of school membership survey. Don't let this slide overwhelm you. I know there's a lot, but I'll walk through each of the components on this slide. I did think that for some of the new board members and maybe new community members, a little bit of background about the PSSM and the Catalyst group would be helpful. So I will provide some context, and it will help provide some context for this data. For the past 4 years, Haverford has participated with a group of educational practitioners focusing on fostering belonging in schools. University of Pennsylvania hosts this group, but the regional group is comprised of many other schools and school districts across the tri-state area. As part of this work, all schools utilize the PSSM survey tool, so it gives us a much larger context to view our school data. The PSSM itself consists of 18 prompts, and students answer using a Likert scale. A mean, 18 prompts. A mean or an average score of 3, 4, or 5 indicate a sense of belonging. Increasing levels, the higher the number. Whereas a score of 1 and 2 indicate a disconnect in belonging. This is true even for more negative prompts. As an example, a negative prompt is number 16, which is, I wish I was in a different school. A 5 for that answer would be never true, but a 1 would be always true. So these prompts have actually been reverse scored. This allows the scale to produce a validated individual mean, utilizing the entire scale down to one number. The image in the center of this slide is called a heat map, and it provides a visual representation for each prompt across each school. This gives us the opportunity to see the data across the whole school district. When viewing data, we always begin with what do you notice and what do you wonder? It's kind of a repetitive theme. What do you notice and what do you wonder? Noticing is just observational data. We're not solving, we're not trying to justify, we're not looking for solutions, we're just observing and identifying what we observe. The second step, wondering, is where you identify questions that you now have based on those observations. So in looking at this heat map through a district lens, the first thing that I notice is that there's no red or even light pink coloring. All of the colors are white, shades of light blue, and very dark blue. Again, through a district lens, the next thing that I notice is that there are 3 pretty distinct white columns across all school buildings for prompts 2, 4, and 12. Again, just an observation, not going any further than what I'm noticing. I also notice a few pretty consistent blue columns for prompts 3, 9, and 14. Now, what do these noticings make me wonder? I wonder what those prompts are. What are 2, 4, 12, and as they indicate that students marked those prompts with a lower number consistently across the district. I also wonder what the prompts 3, 9, and 12 are, as our students gave higher scores for those prompts. This would be the work that the building administrators will be doing for the data that comes through their individual buildings as well. University of Pennsylvania does all of this data analysis, and it was sent to us on Friday of last week. So we just received it. So building principals and even central administration are just beginning to go through this data protocol. But I thought it would be important for you to kind of get a glimpse of what that looks like and the type of data that we get back. The averages located on the top right of the slide do show that Haverford means by level next to the regional means. So when I say regional means, again, if you think about it, all of the school districts that participate, that is their sum mean as well. So that's their group together. While we have experienced a slight decrease, we remain at or slightly above the mean of the entire regional group. And individual building scores are also shown on this slide. Discussion with the Catalyst program, when we go to University Penn and meet with the practitioners and the representations from other districts, we continue to discuss in the discussion circle around what are the factors that surrounded the experience of school in the 2021 and the 21-22 school year, and how do those factors influence our students' experiences? Although we have not had to pivot back to a remote or hybrid learning platform this year, and that's a tribute to all of the efforts of the school, the community, families, and teachers, there have been experiences that have affected our students. Students have had to have extended periods of time away from school due to isolation or quarantine, staff shortages for the same reasons, less in-person activities and less clubs. As building administrators begin to review and analyze their building data, I anticipate that some of these same discussions will occur. As will discussions about demographic breakdowns and how students from various social cultural backgrounds are reporting their sense of belonging, as we did indicate and see that some of those demographic breakdowns experienced different senses of belongings across smaller groups. And as I just want to make a note, the board members may see an extra slide next, but that was inadvertently put into the board docs presentation.
I think they were able to remove it.
Oh,
it looks
okay,
like.
all right,
Yep.
perfect.
Thanks.
There was one, I was able to combine all the information into one slide, so I just wanted to explain if you saw an inadvertent one, it should have been deleted, but looks like we were able to pull it up, so thank you.
And although it may not look like it, we do try and keep the slides as few as possible, believe it or not. So thank you, Sarah. In summary, our students' academic performance is showing some growth. We knew we'd see a decline in national, state, as well as our own scores for a variety of reasons. And across the nation, districts and states have acknowledged that this academic recovery from the pandemic will need to occur over the next few years. This is not something that's going to happen overnight or even in just 1 year. But we will continue to address any dips in performance. And the good news is our students have an excellent foundation and are already showing growth toward those places where we used to achieve. And we believe that and feel confident that we will come to that recovery quickly, and we will work toward it in the years to come. At this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions that we can.
Yep. I don't necessarily have a question, more so a comment. First off, thank you for the presentation. I enjoyed reading all the information provided here. I particularly appreciate the whole child learning approach. The emphasis on socio-emotional wellness is true to me for many reasons professionally. And particularly because as a college professor, I see many of the same concerns being raised in our high school students. I see them in my freshmen and sophomore and juniors and seniors. And just yesterday in a meeting with the dean, we talked about how this year has been the most challenging for all of our students for a variety of reasons. They are struggling with how to reacclimate to being on campus full time, to being away from home, all those same things that we've kind of been able to put away. And now it's coming to light. And so I certainly appreciate at this level that we're preparing our students, that we're providing them with these coping mechanisms, and that we're using information to make them a better person as they're leaving our school. So thank you for this presentation.
I have just a few questions. Do we know, I think this, we asked, can you hear me? It's a small room, so I guess we're okay. In the past, I think we've asked this before, do we know how many students got a 4 or a 5 on the AP test, not just the 3? Is that data that we have access to? Okay, I'm just curious, because a lot of colleges don't accept 3s for transfer. So that might just be something useful to add. 3 is passing, so that's good. But in terms of college credit, 4 and 5 would be useful, just so we have kind of a sense of that.
We can get that data for you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's not like a huge concern, but I think it would just be another useful,
Sure.
benchmark, I guess. So one of the things I was thinking about, especially looking through the Ames Web and the map growth data, one of the things I was thinking about is over the past couple of years, we've made some pretty significant curriculum changes, like the Zern math is relatively new. I can't remember all the different ones, like reading eggs was I'm just thinking of the things that I've been voting on, like reading eggs was a big one, like foundations I think was relatively new. How much of this growth do you think is due to those changes in curriculum? Do you think that, I mean, there's no way to like numerically test that, but I'm just wondering like if your thoughts are, you know, cause this is, I guess, better than I expected based on everything we've been hearing about pandemic learning loss. But we were also implementing new curriculum at the same time. And so I'm kind of trying to think about, you know, how that all fits together.
I think for the Ames Web scores and those trees or triangles, when you look at the students in, I think now, all students have had Ames Web.
Okay.
I'm sorry, all students have had foundations at this point because we started it and we've now worked it up through. And so that, it seems like that foundational learning is really working. We are investigating, you know, kindergarten has had that red top of the triangle in a fall and winter, and it always seems to disappear in the spring. It gets much smaller. And we're investigating why. We're looking into that data to say, well, I think they're just not ready for that. They don't understand the test, and it doesn't sound like what they're doing in their classroom. And by the way, they weren't in school very much last year, you know, in preschools. Yeah. But historically, we also have had that same sort of look. But I think that we're starting to see the foundation is happening, and it's really supporting kids. And now we really need to work on, you know, we're concentrating on comprehension because we figured out the other things. So.
It would be a very interesting research study to try and tease out, was it MTSS, was it the pandemic, was it the new curriculum? There's really no way to answer that. The teachers are very happy. We are using both Eureka Math, which is the real math program, and Zern Math, which uses Eureka Math and is the electronic format of it. When I spoke to the teachers and showed this kind of data to the teachers, several of the teachers were like, yeah, but Jeff, we've got an amazing new math program now. It might be that. And so I was trying to say, well, MTSS is working. They're like, yeah, it is, but so is the math program. So all of the above, I think, is contributing to positive success.
That's
yeah.
good.
Yep.
So good, yeah. Layers of approach. So good, I love that. Well, good. That makes me really happy to hear. And then I guess I was kind of looking over the PSSM. Sorry, let me find that. Yeah, I was looking over the PSSM too. And this I think is the first time as a board member I'm seeing this. I can't remember. So I would be curious to know, I know you said you just got this on Friday. So once the administration and the principals and everyone have had time to analyze this, is this something you could report back to us with like some more information? Because I am just kind of curious about like what were these questions, and you know, why are some schools scoring higher than others, and you know, are there things that we can put into place as a district to help increase belonging for everyone, or is that?
I mean, absolutely. And I could go on for quite a while about those, because we already do. So the use of the PSSM data has been a key driver in discussing building principal goals. So they'll look at these goals and they identify what focus areas they want to work on based on their individual data that they comes back with. And then there's a monitoring process. We meet with the principals on a regular basis. They have action plans in place. They involve their equity team and their building coalition, whoever that wants to be. And so, you know, when it's unpacked and there's more information by building, I'm sure that it'll be incorporated in a presentation, because it's something that is really utilized, and it's a driving force, like I said, which is why I wanted to unpack it a little bit, so that when it does come, there's a little understanding behind it.
Thank you. I think those were my questions. Thanks.
I just want to follow up on that same question. So will we have at some point a better understanding of what the individual prompts were?
We could send
Sure, I
that this
could,
week.
I could send it to you right now. I
Like,
printed
'cause
off.
I'm very curious about 4 and 12, right? Like, I'd like to know.
Yeah,
a little
I
bit
know,
more.
me too, right?
So yes, I mean, I do have the individual prompts. The PSSM survey is a validated survey that is published, so anybody at any point could go on and pull up the prompts. It's not top secret information behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So, I can send that to you as well as anyone in the community. It could be posted right along with it, so you could understand kind of what the prompts are that go along with each of those, shades of blue.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
That's interesting.
I had, well, one of my questions, Dr. Crispin took, thank you for the AP scores. I would also love to see, because I wasn't sure if it was 1994, Danielle remembered, a 3 was just passing but didn't count, and 4 or 5 you needed for the credit. So I would love to see, I know that's why a lot of these kids, why I took it, when I took AP exams way back when, to get the college credit. I would love to see that data too. The next thing is a little bit more, I want to say, being a parent of a child in 2nd grade in one of our elementary schools at Linwood, as a comment, I cannot say enough about the MTSS. I mean, what Mrs. McGilvery and the whole staff over there, it's incredible to me to see the growth from even the start of the year in September to my son's first conference, which would have been in November. It's amazing how they're targeting. I mean, it's astounding to me I didn't even understand what MTSS was until they explained it to me, and it's working. I mean, and I'm sure it's being done at all of the 5 elementary schools, not just Linwood, but it's amazing. And I think they should be applauded and recognized, because when you have children, you shouldn't compare. I knew he was behind in reading. He left kindergarten with COVID, and 1st grade was, last year, and they're making great, his confidence, his ability, it's great. So kind of a compliment, but this leads me to a question. I noticed when you were talking about the supports for secondary, for HMS students, for Haverford High School students, it was a lot of tutoring if you qualified. And I was just wondering if we thought more about that. For the little guys, it's easy to see if you're delayed in reading or writing. You can't read or you can't write, or you're struggling. The delays are quite obvious with K1, 2, 3 students. And obviously when you get to the upper grades, they all can read, they all can write. And, it's easy to say if a students have A, B, or C, they're doing fine. But I guess I'm just going to share a personal anecdote. My oldest is in 9th grade. So he finished the middle school last year. He was a 1A math student, so a grade above. I think his lowest math grade for a quarter was a 97. I'm just saying he was a great student, and he is not in district anymore. But at his new school, they took a math placement test for his freshman year. He completed Algebra 1 in 8th grade with, again, I think his average might have been 98. And he couldn't pass their algebra exam. And I had him retested. I thought it was a fluke. I thought he must have just missed the cutoff. And his score was a 63%. And he'll probably kill me if I was sharing this, but I was floored. And talking to the academic counselor there, they were saying, and I guess I should have realized it, with a hybrid format, 2 half days a week, even though he was doing everything, seeking out more work, he said it's more exposure. They were seeing it across the board with all students. It's more exposure, not rigor. And they said, your son would probably be fine jumping into geometry, but when he goes to pre-calc, he'll fall apart. So my son, being who my son is, took an intensive algebra class over the summer so he could jump back into geometry as a freshman, because he had his whole life planned out and knew he had a. But I was wondering about the other kids, and I have 3 good friends in the district whose sons were in HMS 8th grade last year, who were in the pre-algebra, who are now at the high school in algebra. And I'm privy to 2 of their grades from the first block, and they had C's, and they were spending $100 an hour on tutoring, and not because they weren't handing in assignments, but as my one friend said, she's like, it's like he's missing something. She's like, he's doing all the work. She had a tutor, and the tutor's helping, but she's like, he's missing a component. And I shared my story with her about my son, and I'm like, I guess they just, and you know, her son had a B plus last year at HMS, so he wasn't going to qualify. And I'm wondering, I'm worried about these children. What are we, you know, my son wouldn't have qualified for tutoring. He had an A plus in algebra. Her son had a B plus in pre-algebra. And I'm just wondering if we're thinking about them, because they're not showing up on, like, they're doing great. They're moving along, and that's a concern of mine. And I know the recovery is going to take years. I know that for sure. But I feel like we're not looking at that population. We're just looking at the kids. Obviously, if you have the D's and F's, yes, and the low C's, but the struggles are there for the kids, even with the higher grades. And I would hope maybe we could talk about that and try to address that, because I don't see that being, then, you know, I feel like they're going to fall to the wayside a little bit. So I'm sorry, like, just something I wanted to bring up and just bring to light. So.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. That has been a concern of ours too, that there are also students who would have been more advanced, and now they're, you know, only this much advanced on their PSSAs. And so that is something that we are aware of. We could talk to our school counselors and also, you know, review with our teachers and take a look at our qualifications to see if there is some way to capture some more students that maybe not having the lowest of the grades in, you know, in the grade level, but may still benefit from that. So,
Yeah, I was wondering about, because I do know two friends whose children at HMS are getting the extra tutoring, and I guess their grades qualified them for that, but their grades made them stand out. Like, you know, they clearly needed help, but I was thinking about the other kids whose grades don't, so thank you.
I just had a question on how to interpret the data. I love numbers and charts, and I appreciate that you put all this in. I guess looking both at the Ames web and the math mapping one, I noticed that from kindergarten to 5th grade, our students progressively do better. The scores get higher, the green part gets larger.
Leafier.
Is that
Leafier.
leafier? Yes, leafier. Is that expected? That, like, you start with you know, a smaller skill set, and then every year the scores should go up, or is that something that distinguishes, say, our school from other schools where year by year they're kind of tracking at the kind of the same level of proficiency or knowledge?
So throughout the year and year by year, the benchmarks to get to green go up.
Okay.
So, you know, you need 100 words. At this point in the year, you're going to need 120. Even if you had 100 last time and you only get to 115, you're not green anymore because you didn't go as high as you needed to for Ames Web. So that does happen throughout the year as well as across the years.
So then it could be interpreted like our scores show kind of a progressive depth of proficiency, because it's not just they're meeting the standards each year, but when we see a lot more green on a 5th grade than on a 2nd grade one, that means our 5th graders are achieving higher than the test would just baseline.
That is true, but, and I just want to mention, as Sandy said, this is still a test of skills that include oral reading fluency, vocabulary, and some comprehension. It is not as much comprehension as you will see in a curriculum-based assessment. It's not as much comprehension as you would see in, you know, some schools have study island, some students use that, because it is sort of more those foundational skills. So yes, that's all true, but it can't be the only thing we look at in 4th and 5th
Right.
grade.
I was just curious, like
Yes.
seeing it go up from year to year, if that was
Yes.
kind of an extra outcome or expected. And then I think on the PSSM survey, I'd be interested sometimes seeing, it just even looks like in our district and in the group mean that elementary scores higher, middle school a little less, high school, and just unpacking, like, is that just a typical development of adolescence that you feel less connected to your peers and environment, or is there something that we can kind of address to look at, like, why the older students have a lower score on the survey?
Sure, it's a great question and a great thank you for noticing that. But yes, our first year, we spent 3 sessions during the Catalyst practitioner meetings discussing and kind of unpacking the results of the PSSM nationally. And that is a typical theme. Elementary is always, tends to have the stronger sense of belonging, a little bit less middle, and then reduce in high school. Which is why, way back when, if you think about it, one of the initial tasks or goals that Mr. Donaghy set when we began this work was to create, I don't want to say tracking, that's the wrong word, but a lot of effort went into making sure that all of our students at the secondary level were in an activity, in a club, working, doing something to support that peer network and the connection to the school experience. So yes, and so that would be a perfect example of like some of the action steps that would come out of, looking at the data through specific building lenses.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just had 2 other clarifying questions. So in the Ames web description, looking at the total number of students participate, that doesn't seem like the total number of students we actually have in that grade. So is there only a portion of students, or do parents opt out?
No, it should be. Is there a particular grade? It is about the
Is it
number
about?
of students.
Okay,
You know what? I'm wondering if you're looking in the parentheses is the percentage?
Yeah, no, I was
You've
looking
got
at the
it.
total
Okay.
number. I thought we had higher, so,
It's
okay.
around 500-ish
Okay.
in each grade, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Great. And then, with the additional supports, increased with summer school supports, are those mostly online supports, or have we been able to add more in person as well?
No, we will definitely have an in-person program. We do plan on having some online, because for some folks that is more
Oh, yeah,
convenient.
no,
but we
absolutely. I know,
will
especially
be-
at the high school level,
Yeah.
I think kids
Yeah.
actually like that, yeah.
They do. Even prior to COVID, a lot of that was sort of virtual meetings, but, yeah, no, we will definitely have an in-person summer school.
Option as well. Okay, wonderful. And I just wanted to, again, just reiterate, thank you. This was really thoughtfully done, and I appreciate all the thought and effort that went into it.
Thank you.
All right, great.
If I could. Thanks for the presentation. One thing I really appreciate is how multidimensional this range of assessments is. Going back to No Child Left Behind, I've never been a particular fan of standardized testing. The PSSAs and the SATs track pretty well with the value of your home. It's great to see the variety of ways that we're coming at this, and that we are looking at the social emotional component, especially post-COVID. So this was very helpful. Thank you.
And the next item on our agenda, Sandy Connelly is going to share with us some information about our Kutztown Reading Internship Program.
So tonight we are going to share some information both from the interns. We have 5, this year we have 5 Kutztown interns. Last year we had 3 Kutztown interns. And these are students who have already graduated from college, who are now in their reading specialist program. And so this is their internship, and they actually spend a year with us being interns. In so doing, they can support the reading specialists and small groups while they're learning. And they also are able to substitute, which has been really a big deal this year. We've needed to use them occasionally for that purpose. So I'm sort of sharing this as what the value added is for these interns. And this is, I asked each of the interns to submit a paragraph answering what they, were learning from the internship, how they were feeling like they could support teachers, and what they were getting out of it. And this is a word cloud made from the feedback that the current interns submitted. So I put all their paragraphs into a word cloud, and you can see that the larger words are based on their frequency in the text that was provided for them. You can see that the interns have learned much through this experience. That's why the word learn is so large, as they have been supporting students in reading, analyzing data, working with teachers and reading specialists. So it's sort of fun to look and see what words really, really stick out there. Next, I have a short video that our reading specialist made, submitted some videos for. And you're going to get to hear from the reading specialists of each of our schools how the reading interns have impacted them and their students. And can I just push on, or can you push on that button to make it work? Thank you.
Hi, this is Lisa Neary and Tina Reynolds. We are the reading specialists at Chestnut Wall. And we wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you for the chance to have another reading intern help us out this year. There's so many benefits to having the reading interns in our building. The biggest is having the extra hands to support more students and give them more reading support, and also to have the help with subbing. Thanks again.
Hi, my name is Tanya Rodenbach, and I am the reading specialist here at Coopertown. This year, I have had the privilege of working with Courtney O'Rourke, who is our reading intern from Kutztown University. Through Courtney's internship, we have been able to provide small group sizes for students who need reading support here at Coopertown. And in doing so, we've been able to better meet the needs of our students because we've been able to plan and deliver more individualized instruction because the groups are smaller. Courtney has also been a huge help collecting progress monitoring data, helping us analyze that to make sure we are always meeting those individual needs and providing support when necessary. Courtney is a great collaborator, and she always brings a wealth of knowledge that she has learned from her classes at Kutztown and shares that with us. We're really lucky to have Courtney this year, and her help and experience has been invaluable. Thanks so much for the opportunity to host her.
Hi, this is Jen Linnity, reading specialist at Chatham Park, and Dutleen Joseph works with me as the intern from Kutztown. Dutleen has only been with us since the third week of December, but is now an integral part of our reading support team. There has been nothing that I've asked her to do or to support me with that she has even flinched about doing. She's made our lives here, myself and Jane, our other reading specialist, a lot easier with being able to help with some of our most struggling readers, either by taking an additional group or by working one-on-one with a student that we wouldn't normally have the time to be able to do. We're super appreciative for Dutleen and the opportunity that the curriculum office has offered us with our Kutztown interns.
We love having Kutztown reading interns at Linwood. With the reading intern on our team, we can support more readers.
They are part of our school community as a reading intern, but also as a substitute teacher.
Interns bring a current educational perspective to reading support.
And they're eager to learn and implement new strategies and ideas.
Interns bring so much energy to the reading team, seeing reading support from a new lens.
We can't wait to have more Kutztown reading interns in the future.
So, we can go on to the next slide, guys. If this isn't working, thank you. So, tonight, I'm just introducing that update on how things are going with the interns in school, and you can see that they are really, really valuable, that the reading specialists are really appreciating having them, and I think the children especially are appreciating that. So at a future school board meeting, not tonight, because this is just an informational piece, we'll be asking you to approve 3 Kutztown interns for the 22-23 school year that we've identified so far. Now, we've budgeted for a total of 5 interns, but we've only identified 3 so far. So we hope to return to you later in the year and also ask you to approve 2 more interns when we've identified them. Thank you so much for your consideration and your attention at this time. Does anyone have any questions?
some of the interns we had in the past came here, once they finished the Kutztown program, came here full-time, is that right?
Yes, all three of them last year were
Oh,
all
that's
hired.
great.
Yes, they're
Okay.
all here
So
now.
that's like a great pipeline for.
It was great.
Up-and-coming teachers as
Yeah,
well, so that's
and I think one of the things that's excellent is not only are they learning, how we teach reading and reading support, but because they've been in the classroom in so many different grade levels, they really understand our curriculum, they understand the way the buildings work. So they hit the ground running and were able to interview with a lot of background knowledge and have been successful.
Great.
So thank you for reminding me of that,
Yeah,
because
no,
I
it's
didn't
good.
mention that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
was gonna ask you, based on that slide, why we weren't getting 5. But since you told me that the three that we had previously are all now working here.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we could get more than 5.
Yeah, thank you. I'll tell you honestly, they go through, we put them through a very rigorous interview process. I'm now on the board of Kutztown, on the reading board at Kutztown. And I interview all the candidates that come forward for this program, and then I handpick the ones that I want, here. So in the evenings, a couple times a year, I interview many, many people, and I'm picky about who we're gonna get, because honestly, our reading specialists are very busy teaching reading, analyzing data, assessing students, and so we want to make sure we have the most prepared interns to come to so we're not causing more of a burden, but that we're actually getting support. Thank you. I'm glad you're supportive of them. Any other questions or comments?
Can I just add, just because Sandy won't toot her own horn, the program was excellent when it came to us from Kutztown, but as anyone who knows Sandy might imagine, she was able to offer suggestions just not only about their process for selection, but even their class preparation that they do and what they learn as part of their coursework that has impacted the program. And, she's become a part of making that program successful, not only for us, but for everyone who uses this. So I just wanted to acknowledge Sandy's
thanks.
work for that.
Yes, they've revised the order in which their courses are offered so that the students come to us in the fall prepared to do what we need them to do in the fall, which they weren't necessarily as prepared the first year, but this year they came knowing more because of changing their course order around based on the actual experience in the schools. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our agenda items, and now we are available for public comment, if anybody would like to say anything.
I think
Our future forward, yeah. All right, seeing no public comment for tonight, the committee meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Questions for you? Is this